Do not let that man near the signing table. Vivian Hartwell said it without raising her voice, and somehow that made it colder. The words slipped across the glass lobby of Hartwell Logistics Systems just as the cameras were going live, just as the board members straightened their jackets, just as the biggest contract in the company's history waited under a silver pin beneath a wash of white lights. Everyone turned, not toward the contract, toward the man standing near the west wall with a wrench in one hand and a folded rag in the other. Caleb Brooks had only come upstairs because a pipe behind the lobby display had started leaking again. He was maintenance. Night shift, mostly. 41 years old, tired in the shoulders, steady in the eyes, with oil worked deep into the lines of his hands no amount of soap could fully erase. His shirt still smelled faintly of metal and boiler heat. His boots left no mud, but they looked like they had walked through enough life to offend a room built for polished shoes. Behind Vivian, the massive digital map of Hartwell's national shipping network glowed across the wall. Blue routes, white dots, moving numbers. A clean little picture of control. Caleb noticed the first red blink before anyone else did. Then the second. Then a cluster of delayed routes gathered over Ohio like blood under skin. He paused with the wrench still loose in his fingers. The chief technology officer, Miles Grant, was laughing with a government representative near the signing table. Vivian stood at the center of everything, white blazer sharp, hair pinned back, face composed in the way powerful people become composed when too many people are watching. Caleb should have kept walking. Men like him learned early that being right in the wrong room could still cost you something. But the pattern on the screen pulled at him. It was not random. It was not weather. It was not a server stall. It was a loop. A quiet, hungry loop, feeding bad data back into a routing engine that was supposed to think faster than any human being in the building. Caleb looked up and spoke before caution could stop him. That pattern is not random. The room did not freeze all at once. It tightened. First the receptionist stopped typing. Then one of the junior engineers glanced over. Then Miles turned, wearing a smile that had never had to ask permission. "I am sorry," he said, loud enough for the cameras to catch. "Did maintenance just diagnose our national logistics platform?" A few people laughed. Not much. Just enough. Caleb lowered his eyes for half a second, then looked back at the screen. "No, sir. I just said the pattern is not random." Vivian turned then. Slowly. She took him in with a look that moved from his boots to his uniform to the rag in his hand. Last, it stopped on his fingers. Dark hands. Strong hands. Marked by years of repair, rent, school lunches, broken radiators, and promises made to a little girl sleeping across town with a science worksheet unfinished on the kitchen table. Vivian's jaw tightened. She had investors in the room. Reporters. Board members waiting for weakness. A company built on precision beginning to tremble behind her. And there he stood, a man with oil on his hands, speaking truth in public before she was ready to hear it. "Those dirty hands do not belong here," she said. No shouting. No scene. Just a clean sentence, delivered like a door closing. Caleb felt the words land. They were not new words, not really. They wore a different suit every few years, but he knew the shape of them. He folded the rag once. Then twice. He slipped the wrench into his tool belt. "Yes, ma'am," he said. That was all. No anger. No defense. No plea for dignity from people who had misplaced their own. He stepped back toward the service corridor. And that was when the screen behind Vivian changed again. One red line became 20. 20 became a flood. Somewhere in the room, a phone began to ring. Then another. Then 5 at once. Miles stopped smiling. The digital map flickered. Shipment holds. Contract timing failure. Penalty window active. Vivian turned toward the wall, and for the first time that morning, her perfect face lost one small piece of control. The signing table sat under the lights, untouched. The silver pen waited. The cameras kept recording. Caleb stopped at the edge of the corridor, one hand resting on the handle of his cart. He did not turn around to enjoy the panic. He did not need to. He could hear it in the silence. The first call came from Denver. The second from Atlanta. The third from a warehouse outside Columbus, where 52 trucks sat in a row with loaded trailers and nowhere to go. Vivian Hartwell stood beneath the glow of the failing map and listened as her company began to speak in alarms. Not voices. Not yet. Just tones. Sharp. Repeating. Unforgiving. Miles Grant moved fast now, his confidence breaking into fragments as he tapped through his tablet. "It is a display lag," he said. "The core system is fine." No one believed him, not even Miles. The government representative near the signing table leaned toward one of his aides, whispering behind a folder. A board member checked the stock alert on his phone and turned pale. The reporters lowered their cameras just enough to make it look polite while still recording everything. Vivian felt the room shift around her. A moment ago, she had owned it. Now the room was watching to see whether she would crack. "Shut down the public feed," she ordered. Evelyn Price, her assistant, was already moving. "Trying, ma'am. The broadcast team says the feed is tied to the signing event. They need 3 minutes." "We may not have 3 minutes," someone from legal said. The sentence hit harder than it should have. On the main screen, a countdown appeared in the upper corner. 12 minutes and 48 seconds. Then 47. Then 46. Caleb saw it from the service corridor. He had one hand on his cart, the other near the folded rag in his pocket. He could have kept walking. He had done what he was told. Men with dirty hands did not belong here. That was the sentence. The room had accepted it. He had accepted it out loud because sometimes peace was not agreement. Sometimes it was discipline. But the numbers on that screen kept falling, and behind those numbers Caleb saw faces no one in the lobby was thinking about. Dispatch clerks on hourly pay. Warehouse loaders waiting past lunch. Drivers burning diesel on the shoulder of Interstate 70. Night shift workers who would be blamed by morning because blame always rolled downhill. Miles pointed at a cluster on the map. "Restart the East Coast Gateway." A young engineer hesitated. "We already did." "Then do it again." "It is not responding." "Then force it." The engineer swallowed. "If we force it while the routing engine is looping, we could duplicate every active shipment request." The room went quiet again. Not embarrassed quiet. Dangerous quiet. The kind that starts counting money in its head. Vivian stepped closer to the screen. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Board chair. Again. She rejected the call. Her breath stayed even, but her fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles went pale. "Miles," she said low. "Tell me exactly what is happening." Miles stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him personally. "We have a routing congestion issue." That is not an answer. It is the only accurate answer until my team gets deeper into the logs. You have 12 minutes. Then everyone needs to stop distracting us. His eyes flicked toward the service corridor. Caleb noticed. So did Vivian. For one brief second, her gaze found him again. This time it did not stop at his hands. It stopped at his face. Calm. Watchful. Not smug. Not wounded in a way she could use. Just present. That unsettled her. Caleb turned slightly, ready to push the cart through the corridor doors, when the screen flashed a new warning. Penalty window active. Automatic termination pending. 800 employee accounts flagged for operational review. Caleb closed his eyes for one beat. Nia had once asked him why grown-ups got punished for things they did not do. He had told her the world was not always fair, but people could still choose to be. He hated when his own words came back to collect something from him. The loop is not in the gateway, Caleb said. He said it quietly, but the lobby had become the kind of silent where quiet words traveled. Miles snapped his head toward him. You are still here? Caleb did not move closer. Yes, sir. Then keep doing what you were doing. Vivian lifted one hand. Miles stopped. The countdown reached 10 minutes and 2 seconds. Vivian looked at Caleb, and Caleb saw the war inside her. Pride on one side, panic on the other. In the middle, something smaller. Something human. What did you see? She asked. Miles laughed once, but it came out wrong. Vivian, no. She did not look at him. I asked Mr. Brooks a question. Caleb let go of the cart handle. He walked back 3 steps, slow enough not to seem eager, steady enough not to seem afraid. The cameras were still on. The board was still watching. The woman who had humiliated him now stood under the same bright lights, needing an answer from the man she had tried to erase. Caleb looked at the red clusters crawling across the map. Your system is not losing routes, he said. It is chasing the same route over and over because someone taught it to trust the wrong signal. Vivian's eyes sharpened. Can you prove that? Caleb looked at the terminal near the signing table, then at Miles, then back at her. Not from the hallway. The countdown dropped under 9 minutes. Vivian removed the access card from the lapel of her white blazer and held it in her hand. For a moment, no one breathed. Then she placed it on the table in front of Caleb. Show me, she said. Caleb looked at the card on the table before he touched it. Not because he was afraid of technology, because he understood rooms like this. A man could save the day and still be accused of stealing the key. Vivian seemed to understand the hesitation a second too late. Her eyes moved to the cameras, then to the board members, then back to him. "Everyone saw me give it to you," she said. Caleb nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He picked up the card between two fingers and walked to the side terminal beneath the main display. The terminal looked too clean, too expensive, as if no one had ever needed it badly enough to leave fingerprints. Miles stepped in front of him. "This is absurd. He does not have clearance." Caleb stopped. He did not push past him. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood there, holding a borrowed key in a room that still did not believe he could open anything. Vivian's voice cut through the space behind them. "Move, Miles." Miles turned slowly. "You are putting a maintenance employee into a federal logistics environment during a live contract failure, and you are standing between me and the only person who has said something useful in the last 4 minutes." That landed. A few people looked down. Miles moved, but only half a step, enough to obey without surrendering. Caleb slid the card into the reader. The terminal woke with a soft chime. He sat down. His hands hovered above the keyboard for one breath. Oil marked the side of his thumb, a dark crescent under one nail. Vivian saw it, and shame moved quietly through her before she could name it. Those were the same hands she had dismissed. Now everyone in the room was waiting for them. "I need read access to the routing logs from the last 40 minutes, Caleb said. Miles folded his arms. "You will not understand them." Caleb did not look away from the screen. "Then it should not take long for me to be wrong." Evelyn Price, standing near Vivian, almost smiled. Almost. Vivian entered a second authorization from her phone. The logs opened. Lines of time stamps poured down the screen, dense and colorless. To most of the room, it looked like rain on a window. To Caleb, it looked like a story somebody had tried to hide inside numbers. He leaned closer. The countdown on the main screen dropped to 7 minutes and 13 seconds. "There," he said. No one else saw it. "There what?" Vivian asked. "The routing engine is being fed priority updates from a mirror node." Miles scoffed. "We do not use mirror nodes for live dispatch." Caleb tapped once. A line expanded. "You do today." The room tightened again. Caleb opened another layer, then another. He moved with a quiet rhythm, not fast for show, not slow for drama, just exact. The kind of exactness built from years of fixing things no one else wanted to touch. Furnaces in January. School air systems in August. Apartment wiring after midnight. Old laptops bought secondhand so his daughter could learn coding games instead of just watching other kids play them. He had learned patience from broken machines. He had learned humility from unpaid bills. He had learned focus from being underestimated so often that anger became too expensive to carry. "This is not a crash," he said. "It is a false confidence signal." Vivian stepped closer. "Explain it like I am not one of your engineers." Caleb glanced at her for the first time. Not sharply, not cruelly. "The system thinks the same lane is the safest route because someone keeps telling it the lane is clear. It is not clear. So every truck gets pointed back into the same failure." A young engineer behind Miles whispered. "That would explain the duplicate holds." Miles shot him a look. The engineer went silent. Caleb kept working. "Who pushed the last update?" Vivian asked. Miles answered too quickly. "Automated batch from night operations." Caleb shook his head. "No, ma'am." Miles stiffened. "Excuse me." Caleb highlighted a hidden signature string buried beneath the update record. Night operations got named on it, but they did not write it. For the first time since the alarms began, Miles had nothing ready. Vivian stared at the screen. "Are you saying someone inside this company rerouted the blame?" Caleb did not answer immediately. He traced one more path, opened one more log, then sat back just enough for everyone to see the line. "I am saying someone knew exactly who people like you would blame first." The words did not come loud. They did not need to. Vivian felt them pass through the polished lobby, past the cameras, past the silver pen, past every clean surface that had helped her mistake appearance for truth. The countdown reached 5 minutes and 29 seconds. Caleb placed both hands back on the keyboard. "I can bypass the false signal and split the load through the secondary lanes," he said. "It will not be pretty, but it will move." Vivian's voice was barely above a breath. "Do it." Miles stepped forward. "Vivian, if he touches that routing structure and fails, we lose everything." Caleb looked up at the map, then at the contract waiting on the table. "Sir," he said softly, "you are already losing everything." Then he began to type. Caleb typed like a man repairing something in the dark, by touch alone. No wasted motion. No flourish. Just quiet pressure, line after line, command after command, his eyes moving between the terminal and the great wall of red above him. The countdown dropped. Under 5 minutes. In the lobby, no one coughed. No one whispered. Even the reporters seemed to forget they were holding cameras. The entire room had narrowed to the sound of Caleb Brooks pressing keys with hands Vivian had publicly dismissed less than 10 minutes earlier. Miles hovered behind him, jaw tight, searching for a mistake he could name before the miracle became undeniable. "He is writing a manual override," one of the junior engineers murmured. "He is not authorized to do that," Miles snapped. Caleb did not turn around. "I am not rewriting the core system," he said. "I am giving it a clean road until you find out who poisoned the old one." The words settled heavily. Poisoned. Not broken. Not delayed. Poisoned. Vivian heard the difference. So did the board. She stepped closer to the terminal, close enough to see the reflection of the code moving across Caleb's face. His expression had not changed. That bothered her more than panic would have. Panic would have made sense. Pride would have made sense. But Caleb looked like he was fixing a heater before a winter storm, not standing between a billion-dollar company and public collapse. "What do you need?" she asked. Caleb's eyes stayed on the screen. 30 seconds without interruption. Miles laughed under his breath. "That is not a technical requirement." Caleb's fingers kept moving. "It is a human one." Evelyn Price looked at Miles then, and for once, the assistant's face was not polite. It was tired. The kind of tired that came from watching the wrong people take up all the air. Vivian raised her hand. "No one speaks." The room obeyed. Caleb opened the false confidence signal, isolated the mirror node, then built a temporary route through older secondary lanes the company had stopped using after a software upgrade 2 years ago. He remembered those lanes from a maintenance ticket no executive had ever read. A cooling unit had failed in the backup server room one Thanksgiving night, and Caleb had spent 6 hours beside the old routing rack, while Nia slept at home with a neighbor watching over her. He had read the labels because that was what he did. He noticed things. He respected systems, even abandoned ones, especially abandoned ones. The countdown reached 3 minutes and 41 seconds. "Secondary lanes are outdated," Miles said, forgetting Vivian's order. "They cannot handle national load." Caleb hit enter on a diagnostic test. Yellow lines flickered across the map. Not all of it. Enough to breathe. A shipment marker moved. Just one. A small blue dot outside St. Louis shifted from hold to active. No one celebrated. They were afraid to. Then another moved near Nashville. Then 3 more in Pennsylvania. Vivian's lips parted slightly. The government representative leaned forward. "Are those live?" he asked. No one answered him because everyone was watching the map begin to remember itself. Caleb split the load again, this time routing the highest priority shipments through state corridors with lower congestion. It was not elegant. It was not pretty. It looked, on paper, like a man using back roads to save a house from fire. But it worked. The red clusters thinned. The warning banner stuttered. The penalty clock paused for half a second, then resumed. 2 minutes and 12 seconds. "Come on," whispered the junior engineer, so softly it sounded like prayer. Caleb saw one more loop trying to pull the system back into failure. The false signal was still feeding, still pretending to be truth. He opened its source path and found the hidden tag again. Night operations. A name placed there like a cheap lock on an expensive lie. He could bypass it now and leave the question for later. That would save the contract. It would also leave the blame sitting on people who had never stepped foot in this lobby. Caleb's hands paused. Vivian saw it. "What is wrong?" she asked. Caleb looked at the screen, then at the countdown. 1 minute and 30 seconds. "If I bypass without copying the source trail, whoever did this can say night shift caused it." Miles stepped in quickly. "We do not have time for a moral debate." Caleb turned just enough to look at him. That is usually when people lose them. Vivian felt the sentence strike somewhere below her ribs. It was not aimed at her, but it found her anyway. Caleb inserted a trace capture, compressed the source path, and sent it to the legal archive with Vivian's access signature attached. Miles went still. Too still. Evelyn noticed. Vivian noticed Evelyn noticing. Caleb did not look back again. He returned to the override, closed the loop, and rerouted the final cluster through the secondary network. The countdown dropped under 30 seconds. The main display flashed once. Then again. Red became yellow. Yellow became blue. Shipment holds released across the country in staggered waves, from Chicago to Dallas, from Atlanta to Sacramento, from warehouse docks to truck cabs where drivers would never know the name of the man who had just given them back their day. The penalty warning vanished with 11 seconds left. For a moment, no one moved. The room did not erupt. It exhaled, a long, stunned breath from people who had been holding themselves together with money, status, and fear. Caleb removed his hands from the keyboard and slid Vivian's access card back across the table. Your contract should hold, he said. Vivian stared at the blue map, then at him. The silver pen still lay under the lights, but something larger than a contract had just been signed in silence. She had asked for proof. He had given her rescue, and he had done it without once asking the room to apologize for making him prove he belonged. The silence after the map turned blue was not victory. Not yet. Victory would have been loud. This was something stranger. A room full of important people realizing they had been saved by someone they had been trained not to see. Caleb stood from the terminal, careful not to push the chair back too hard. Habit. In places like this, even the sound of a chair could be judged if it came from the wrong person. The government representative checked his tablet, then looked toward Vivian. The timing window is still valid, he said. We can proceed. A board member whispered, Thank God. Caleb heard it and almost smiled. People often thanked heaven when labor did the work. Vivian did not move toward the silver pen. Her eyes were fixed on the legal archive notification Caleb had sent before closing the loop. Source trail captured. Internal signature preserved. The words glowed on the side display like a sealed envelope waiting to ruin someone's morning. Miles reached for his tablet too quickly. We should take that offline and review it privately. Vivian turned her head. Why? One word. Clean. Quiet. Deadly. Miles blinked. Because there may be sensitive data involved. There is always sensitive data involved when someone almost destroys a company. His mouth tightened. I am saying we need to control the narrative. Caleb picked up his folded rag from beside the keyboard. That is what got you here. The room heard him. Miles stared at him as if the rag itself had spoken out of turn. Excuse me. Caleb looked at Vivian, not Miles. Somebody knew your company cared more about appearance than truth. That is why they hid the blame where nobody would look twice. Vivian felt heat rise behind her face, not from embarrassment alone, but recognition. She had built this room. Glass walls, white lights, perfect surfaces, fast decisions. No dirt, no hesitation, no softness. And minutes ago, she had seen Caleb's hands and chosen the easiest story about him. Miles stepped closer. With respect, Mr. Brooks, you were asked to fix a temporary issue, not make accusations. Caleb's expression stayed calm. I am not accusing. The log is. Evelyn Price moved beside Vivian and handed her a tablet. Her voice was low. The source trail is already in legal archive. It cannot be altered without leaving another record. For the first time, Miles lost color. Just a little. Just enough. Vivian saw it. The junior engineer saw it too and looked away fast, the way young employees look away when they realize the person above them may not be safe to follow. The government representative cleared his throat. Ms. Hartwell, are we proceeding with the signing? Vivian looked at the pen. The old Vivian would have signed immediately. Saved the image. Smiled for the cameras. Turned crisis into confidence. That was what power had taught her to do. Keep moving. Keep shining. Never let them see the crack. But Caleb had put a crack in something larger than her morning. He had made her see the people standing under every decision she made. Warehouse workers, dispatchers, drivers, night crews, the invisible machinery of human lives. She turned to the cameras. We will proceed, she said. Then she looked at Evelyn. But the internal review begins now, on record. A murmur went through the room. Miles opened his mouth. Vivian did not let him speak. And no member of night operations is to be suspended, questioned without representation, or blamed until this trail is fully examined. Caleb's eyes lifted slightly. Not gratitude. Not surprise. Something quieter. Respect waiting to see if it had a reason to stay. Vivian noticed, and it made her feel smaller in a way money could not fix. She walked to the signing table, but before she picked up the pen, she turned back to Caleb. Mr. Brooks. He stood beside the terminal, wrench on his belt, rag in his hand, access card returned, already half outside the circle of light. Yes, ma'am. Stay. The word came out softer than she intended. Not an order. Not quite a request. Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down. Nia. He did not answer, but the name on the screen was enough to remind him what time it was, who waited after school, and why no room full of glass mattered more than a child expecting her father to show up. I have to pick up my daughter in 40 minutes, he said. A few people looked surprised, as if fatherhood was an unexpected credential. Vivian heard it differently. She heard a boundary. A man who had just saved her company still knew exactly what came first. Then we will not waste your time, she said. She signed the contract in one clean stroke. Cameras flashed. Applause rose, careful and relieved. Caleb did not clap. He watched the blue map for one more second, making sure it held. Then Vivian walked back to him, past board members, past reporters, past Miles standing rigid with his tablet clutched too tightly. Where did you learn to do that? She asked. Caleb folded the rag again. Same motion as before. Different room now. Old manuals. Night classes. Broken systems people gave up on. He paused, and something in his eyes softened without weakening. And a little girl who thinks I can fix anything. Vivian had no answer for that. For once. Silence did not make her look powerful. It made her look human. Caleb nodded politely and turned toward the service corridor. Behind him, the company kept breathing. In front of him, the rest of his day waited like it always had. School pickup, dinner, homework, rent. The small holy duties no camera ever came to record. Caleb made it halfway down the service corridor before the applause behind him folded into muffled noise and disappeared under the hum of the building. The hallway back here was narrower. Lower ceiling. Fluorescent lights. Beige walls with scuff marks no executive tour would ever pass. He preferred it. Things were more honest where the paint was chipped. He pushed his cart toward the freight elevator, one wheel squeaking softly every few feet. The sound steadied him. So did the weight of the wrench on his belt. For a few minutes upstairs, everyone had looked at him like he was more than maintenance. Now the corridor reminded him that miracles still had schedules. He checked his phone. Nia had sent 3 messages. First, a picture of her science worksheet. Then, a row of question marks. Then, Daddy, do not forget we need poster board. Caleb smiled despite the ache sitting behind his ribs. He typed back, never. Blue or green. Her answer came before the elevator arrived. Purple. Obviously. He shook his head. Obviously, he whispered. The elevator doors opened with a tired groan. Before he could step inside, Arthur Bell, the old security guard from the loading dock, appeared around the corner, holding a paper cup of coffee. Heard the whole building nearly fell apart, Arthur said. Heard you held it up with a keyboard and a prayer. Caleb took the coffee with a small nod. Mostly old software. Arthur studied him. You all right? Caleb looked back toward the lobby he could no longer see. Ask me tomorrow. Arthur understood that answer better than most. He had worked enough doors to know that respect given in public could become resentment in private. He leaned closer. Watch that Grant fellow. Caleb's eyes lifted. You saw something? I see people, Arthur said. That man came through the loading entrance twice last week after midnight. No badge. Scan either time. Had somebody from information technology walk him in. Caleb held the coffee still. You report it? Arthur gave a weary smile. To who? The man signs half the security approvals. The elevator sat open between them. Waiting. Caleb looked down at his phone again. 40 minutes was becoming 32. Write down what you remember, he said. Arthur's brow rose. You getting involved? Caleb did not answer right away. He thought of Vivian's face when the archive trail appeared. He thought of the night crew who would have been blamed by breakfast. He thought of Nia asking why grown-ups got punished for things they did not do. I think I already am, he said. Upstairs, Vivian Hartwell remained in the lobby long after the cameras packed up. The contract was signed. The investors were reassured. The press had their clean version of the morning. Technical disruption resolved, Hartwell systems stable, leadership decisive under pressure. Clean words. Useless words. Vivian stood before the blue map and hated how beautiful it looked now. Evelyn approached quietly. Legal has sealed the archive copy. They are asking whether to begin interviews tonight. Yes. Vivian's answer came too quickly. Then she corrected herself. No. Start with access records. Badge logs. Administrative overrides. I want facts before fear. Evelyn nodded. And Mr. Grant? Vivian looked across the lobby. Miles stood near the far windows, speaking into his phone with his back turned. His posture was controlled, but not calm. There was a difference. Caleb had taught her that without trying. Do not alert him yet, Vivian said. And do not let him near the archive. Evelyn's expression changed slightly. You think he is involved? Vivian watched Miles end the call and slipped the phone into his jacket. I think someone counted on me looking down instead of looking closely. The words tasted bitter because they were true. Evelyn softened. Caleb left for his daughter. Vivian turned. Good. But the word landed strangely in her own chest. Good that he had left. Good that he had a life outside this glass tower. Good that someone in this building still knew what mattered without needing a board vote. She walked to the terminal where he had sat. There, beside the keyboard, he had forgotten something. Not the access card. Not the rag. A small folded piece of paper had slipped from his pocket and rested near the edge of the desk. Vivian picked it up carefully. It was not company property. It was a child's drawing, creased and worn soft from being carried too many times. A little girl had drawn a man with big hands fixing a crooked machine, while a smiling son watched from the corner. Across the top, in purple marker, were the words, "My dad fixes what people give up on." Vivian stood very still. The lobby lights reflected in the glass around her, bright and perfect and cold. For the first time all day, she did not think about saving her company. She thought about the man walking out of it, carrying more dignity than the room had known how to hold. Caleb bought the purple poster board from a corner pharmacy 2 blocks from Mia's school, along with a pack of markers he could not really afford and a chocolate milk he knew she would pretend not to want until he handed it to her. By the time he reached the school gate, the afternoon sun had turned the sidewalk gold, and children were spilling out in bright backpacks and louder voices than the whole Hartwell lobby put together. Nia spotted him before he spotted her. She ran with her braids bouncing, one sneaker untied, her folder pressed against her chest like state secrets. "Daddy, you are late by 2 minutes," she said, breathless and serious. Caleb looked at his watch. 2 minutes. 2.5 if we are rounding honestly. He placed one hand over his heart. "My mistake, Professor Brooks." She took the poster board from him, inspected the color, and nodded like a client approving a major delivery. "Good. Purple is for innovation. I will remember that." They walked home under the train tracks, past a laundromat, a barber shop, and a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and butter. Nia told him about her science fair project, about a boy named Carter who said backup systems were boring, and about how she planned to prove him wrong using a flashlight, a shoebox, and 2 old phone chargers. Caleb listened. The way he listened to machines, carefully, as if every small sound mattered. But part of him stayed back in that lobby, watching Miles go still when the archive trail appeared. Nia noticed. Children always noticed what adults thought they had hidden. "Did something happen at work?" she asked. Caleb looked down at her. "Something broke. Did you fix it?" He smiled a little. "Some of it." She studied his hands. The oil was mostly gone now, but the stains remained in the creases, stubborn as memory. Were people nice about it? That question slowed him more than the traffic light did. Across the street, a bus hissed to a stop. A man argued into his phone. Somewhere above them, the train roared over the tracks, shaking dust loose from the steel. Caleb waited until the noise passed. "Not at first," he said. Nia frowned. "Why not?" "Because sometimes people look at the outside of a thing and decide they already know what it is." She kicked a pebble along the sidewalk. "Like when they think old wires are useless." "Exactly like that. But old wires can still carry power if they are not broken." Caleb looked at her then, really looked, and felt the day soften around the edges. "Who taught you that?" She grinned. "You did." They reached their building, a modest brick walk-up above a hardware store, where the stairwell smelled like cardboard, floor cleaner, and someone's dinner starting too early. Their apartment was small, but clean in the way a place becomes clean when pride has to stretch farther than money. Nia dropped her backpack near the table and spread the purple poster board like a royal banner. Caleb washed his hands at the kitchen sink, scrubbing longer than usual. Not because of grease, because of Vivian's words. They had followed him home quieter than he expected. Dirty hands. He dried them on a towel with a faded coffee stain and turned to find Nia watching him. "Are those the hands they did not like?" she asked. Caleb froze. Just for a second. Who said that? Nobody, Nia said quickly, which meant she had guessed too much from too little. You just look sad at them. Caleb sat beside her at the table. The late sunlight came through the blinds in. Thin stripes, crossing his knuckles, the poster board, the open box of markers. He placed his hands flat, where she could see them. These hands changed your diapers, fixed your bike, packed your lunches, signed your field trip forms, unclogged Mrs. Alvarez's sink downstairs, and kept our heater running when it was 12 degrees outside. Nia listened without blinking. Caleb's voice stayed low. They are working hands, baby. Never be ashamed of working hands. Nia reached over and touched one of his fingers with her small one. I am not ashamed. Outside, at the curb across the street, a black sedan slowed beside the hardware store. Vivian Hartwell sat in the back seat with Nia's folded drawing in her lap and Caleb's address on her phone, sent by Human Resources after she told herself this was only about returning lost property. But through the second-floor window, she saw enough. The little girl at the table, the purple poster board, the man leaning close, speaking gently with hands the world had tried to make small. Vivian did not step out. Not yet. Some apologies were too thin to carry into a room like that. So she sat in the quiet car, holding the child's drawing, and understood with a heaviness she could not delegate to anyone else that Caleb Brooks had not merely saved her company. He had exposed the part of her that still needed repair. Vivian stayed outside Caleb's building for 6 minutes before she trusted herself to move. 6 minutes was longer than most board votes. Longer than most apologies she had given in her life. Inside the sedan, the city sounded distant, softened by glass and leather and the low hum of an engine that did not belong on that street. Her driver looked at her once through the rearview mirror, then looked away with the professional kindness of someone paid not to notice emotion. Vivian unfolded Nia's drawing again. The purple marker had pressed hard into the paper, as if the child had wanted every word to survive being carried in a pocket. My dad fixes what people give up on. Vivian read it once. Then again. The sentence made the morning return with a sting. Caleb at the terminal. Caleb returning the access card. Caleb walking away from applause because his daughter mattered more than a room full of important people finally deciding he was useful. She had known many brilliant men. Men with degrees framed in walnut. Men who wore confidence like cologne. Men who could explain failure in 6 languages without accepting 1 ounce of responsibility. Caleb had done something else. He had repaired what was broken and protected the people who would have been blamed for it. That difference stayed with her. She opened the car door. The evening air carried the smell of fryer oil from a diner, warm bread from the bakery, and rain gathering somewhere beyond the rooftops. It was not the air she was used to. It did not smell filtered. It smelled lived in. She crossed the street with the drawing held carefully in both hands, then stopped at the entrance of the hardware store below his apartment. A bell above the door chimed when she stepped inside. The man behind the counter looked up from a stack of receipts. Help you find something? Vivian almost said no automatically. Then she looked around at shelves of screws, extension cords, work gloves, paint thinner, furnace filters, all the small practical things that kept ordinary life from falling apart. I am looking for Caleb Brooks, she said. The man studied her clothes, then her face. Second floor. But if you are from management, he already paid what he could this month. The words struck quietly. Vivian blinked. I am not from management. People in expensive coats usually are. She could not argue with that. I am here to return something. He pointed toward the side stairs. Knock soft. His girl scares easy when strangers bang on doors. Vivian nodded. Thank you. The stairwell was narrow and smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. At the top, she paused outside apartment 2B. Through the door came the sound of Nia's voice, bright and certain. No, Daddy. The backup wire has to go here because if the first light fails, the second one should still work. That is the whole point of backup. Caleb's low chuckle followed. I stand corrected. Vivian lifted her hand, then lowered it. An apology was easy in a lobby after rescue. Harder in front. Of a child who still believed her father could fix anything. She knocked softly. The room went quiet. A few seconds later, Caleb opened the door. He had changed out of his uniform shirt into a plain gray tee, but the same tired steadiness lived in his face. His eyes registered her first as a surprise, then as a problem he did not yet understand. Ms. Hartwell. Not Vivian. Not after this morning. She deserved that. Mr. Brooks, she said. I am sorry to come by without calling. Nia peeked from behind him, holding a purple marker. Vivian lowered her gaze to the drawing in her hands. You left this near the terminal. Caleb looked at the paper, and something protective moved across his face. He took it gently. Thank you. Vivian glanced past him at the small kitchen table, the poster board, the shoebox, the tangle of old phone chargers laid out like treasure. The apartment was modest, but nothing about it felt poor in the way her world used the word. It felt cared for. It felt awake. Nia stepped closer. Are you the lady from his work? Caleb said, Nia. Not sharp. Just careful. Vivian looked at the child and felt every polished answer leave her. Yes, she said. I am. Nia tilted her head. Did my dad fix your company? Vivian swallowed. The hallway seemed to shrink around the question. Yes, she said. He did. Nia looked satisfied, as if this confirmed a known fact. He is good at that. Caleb rested one hand on the edge of the door. Was there something else, ma'am? There it was. The boundary. Polite. Firm. Earned. Vivian looked at his hands again, but this time she saw the drawing they had carried, the child they had raised, the company they had saved, the people they had defended. Yes, she said quietly. There is. I owe you an apology, but I do not think your doorway is the place to make it sound smaller than it is. Caleb did not answer. Nia's marker squeaked once against her palm. Vivian took a breath. Tomorrow morning, I am calling a full staff meeting. Not a board meeting. Not a press event. Staff. Everyone. Night operations included. Caleb's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened slightly. Why? Vivian held his gaze. Because I insulted you in public. I should not repair that in private. For the first time since she arrived, Caleb looked away. Not softened. Not convinced. Just thinking. Vivian stepped back from the door, giving him room she should have given him earlier. I am not asking you to forgive me tonight. Her voice nearly broke, but did not. I am asking you to let me begin correctly. Nia looked up at her father, then at Vivian. Does beginning correctly mean saying sorry where everybody can hear it? Vivian almost smiled. Almost. Yes, she said. That is exactly what it means. Caleb looked down at his daughter, then back at the woman in the expensive coat, standing in a narrow hallway that smelled of lemon cleaner and humility. 9 o'clock, he asked. Vivian nodded. 9 o'clock. Caleb gave a small nod, the kind that opened nothing fully but did not close the door either. We will be there. Vivian walked back down the stairs without feeling taller than anyone. Outside, the first drops of rain touched the sidewalk. She looked up at Caleb's window, where father and daughter returned to their purple poster board and backup wires. For once, Vivian did not hurry toward shelter. She stood in the rain a moment, letting the city touch what the tower never could. By 8:50 the next morning, Hartwell Logistics Systems felt different. The lobby had been cleaned, the lights adjusted, the blue map restored to its usual calm glow. But underneath the polish, yesterday still breathed. People stood in small groups near the elevators, whispering with coffee cups in hand. Night operations workers had come in wearing the cautious faces of people summoned to rooms where decisions are usually made about them, not with them. Warehouse dispatchers joined by video from break rooms across the country. Drivers tuned in from truck cabs parked in rest stops and loading yards. Engineers lined the back wall. Board members sat stiffly near the front, unhappy to share space with the people whose names rarely appeared on strategy decks. Caleb arrived at 8:57 with Nia beside him, her purple backpack nearly as big as her shoulders. He wore his maintenance uniform, clean but worn, his name patch slightly frayed. Nia carried her science fair poster board under one arm because school started right after, and because Caleb had promised she would not be late. Arthur Bell stood by the security desk and gave them a small nod. Evelyn Price met them near the side aisle. Mr. Brooks, she said softly. Nia. Nia blinked. You know my name? Evelyn smiled. Your dad talks about you like you are the chief engineer of the planet. Nia considered that. Not yet. Caleb almost laughed, but the room pulled his attention forward. Vivian Hartwell stood at the front, not behind a podium. That mattered. No raised platform. No glass wall. No silver pen. Just Vivian in a dark blue suit, her hair tied back, her hands folded in front of her. Miles Grant stood to one side with two legal officers near him, his face tight, his usual confidence sealed behind silence. The investigation had only begun, but badge records and archive trails had already told enough of the truth to change the temperature of the room. Vivian waited until the murmurs faded. Then she looked at Caleb. Not at his uniform, not at his hands, at him. Yesterday, she began, this company almost failed in front of the entire country. The room stayed still. A system was compromised. A false signal was planted. And the blame was designed to fall on people who were never expected to defend themselves. A night dispatcher on the video wall lowered her eyes. Vivian continued. But before any of us understood that, I made a different failure worse. I looked at a man who works in this building, a father, an employee, a person with skill and dignity, and I reduced him to the condition of his hands. Caleb felt Nia's small fingers slip into his. Vivian's voice held steady, but not easily. I insulted Caleb Brooks in public. So I am apologizing in public. No one moved. Even the elevators seemed to wait. Vivian turned fully toward him. Mr. Brooks, I was wrong. Your hands did belong here. More than that, they did what many cleaner hands failed to do. They repaired the system, protected the innocent, and reminded this company that character is not measured by polish. Caleb did not smile. He did not need the room to see him perform forgiveness. He looked at Vivian for a long moment, then gave one small nod. It was not absolution. It was acknowledgement. Sometimes that was the first honest bridge. Vivian faced the staff again. Effective today, no operational review will begin with the lowest paid person in the chain. It will begin with the facts. Night operations will receive representation in all incident reviews. Maintenance and logistics staff will be included in system resilience meetings. And Mr. Brooks has been asked to serve as a temporary systems integrity advisor while the internal investigation continues. Miles shifted, but said nothing. Caleb looked down at Nia. She whispered, "That sounds important." He whispered back, "So is getting you to school on time." Vivian heard it, and, despite herself, smiled softly. When the meeting ended, people did not rush Caleb. They approached slowly. A dispatcher from Cleveland thanked him through the video wall. A warehouse lead in Dallas touched the brim of his cap. The junior engineer who had been afraid to speak yesterday walked up and said, "I should have backed you sooner." Caleb answered, "Next time, back the truth. It needs all the help it can get." Then he took Nia's poster board and headed for the door. Vivian caught up near the security desk. "Mr. Brooks," she said. He turned. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at Nia, then at him. "Thank you for coming." Caleb adjusted the poster board under his arm. "Thank my daughter. She said if an apology matters, you should not skip it." Vivian looked at Nia. She was right. Nia nodded seriously. "I usually am." Arthur chuckled behind the desk. For the first time in a long while, the lobby did not feel like a place built to remind some people they were smaller. It felt almost human. Caleb walked out into the morning with his daughter beside him, past the shining doors, past the cameras, past the kind of world that had asked him to prove his worth before offering respect. The city was bright after the rain. His hands were still rough, still marked, still his. And Vivian Hartwell watched from inside the glass, understanding that he had not raised his voice. He had raised the standard of the room. If Caleb's quiet dignity touched something in you, tell me in the comments what you think makes a person truly worthy of respect. Have you ever seen someone underestimated, only to become the reason everything changed? Share your thoughts below, and thank you for watching this video until the end.